He thought he would be just another victim, until he showed who he really is. Have you ever felt invisible, like you were just another number in a world too busy to notice who you really are? What if the very people who humiliated you discovered that you weren't who they thought, but someone far stronger, wiser, and more powerful than they ever imagined? He arrived without making a sound. They looked at him with contempt, pushed him into the shadows, but they made a fatal mistake. They thought he'd be just another victim. What they didn't know is that he carried a past, a story, a strength that had been sleeping, but once awakened, would change everything. This is a story of humiliation and pain, but also of justice, redemption, and a transformation no one saw coming. Samuel arrived in his new neighborhood carrying the weight of starting over again. The city was different, bigger, louder, but colder too. He'd lost his job back in his hometown after a long illness had knocked him out of the workforce for nearly a year. At 49, with few options, he'd landed a modest night porter job in a high-end apartment building downtown. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, and that, to him, meant something. The first few days passed quietly, too quietly. Some residents looked at him with suspicion. Others didn't even bother to say hello. But there was a group, 3 young men, rich, arrogant, and bored, who seemed to enjoy mocking Samuel. "Hey, janitor, dropped your hat again, old man. You think he even understands us? Probably crawled out of some cave." Laughter, mocking stares. Samuel smiled politely. He kept his head down, not because he was weak, but because he'd learned over a lifetime that answering cruelty with anger only feeds the fire, and he already had more than enough burn marks. But inside, every word was a needle pressing into an old scar. Once again, he was the outsider, the one who didn't fit, the one with no voice. And as the days passed, what was supposed to be a fresh start began to feel eerily like an old nightmare creeping back into his life. Samuel quickly became part of the scenery, seen but never acknowledged. To most residents, he was just the help, someone to bark orders at, to blame when things went wrong, or to simply ignore altogether. He'd greet everyone with a quiet, "Good evening," but most walked past as if his voice didn't exist. The trio of tormentors, however, made sure he felt very seen. Their names were Cole, Brandon, and Zach, sons of executives, full of privilege and starving for attention. Every night, they'd find a new reason to humiliate him. One evening, they tossed trash right outside the lobby doors and rang the bell just to watch him come out and clean it. The next day, they threw coins on the floor and smirked as Samuel picked them up. "Hey man, you missed one," Cole sneered, pointing to a penny near the curb. Samuel didn't answer. He just picked it up and nodded, even as their laughter stung like acid. Sometimes they'd take pictures of him with their phones while he worked. They never said what they were doing, but he knew. Memes, jokes, he could feel it in their eyes. The amusement of powerful boys playing with someone they thought powerless. And yet, Samuel said nothing. He endured it. Night after night. Why? Because this job mattered. Because he had a sick mother back home depending on him. Because he couldn't afford to lose another piece of stability in his already fragile life. But every insult, every laugh, every moment of silence carved a deeper mark in his spirit. They thought he was just tolerating it. But what they didn't see was that something inside him was slowly awakening. Not rage, not revenge, but purpose. That night, after another shift filled with mockery and whispers behind his back, Samuel walked home under the dim, flickering streetlights. His steps were slow, not from fatigue, but from the weight of memories clawing their way back. He passed a shop window and caught a glimpse of his reflection, worn jacket, tired eyes, and shoulders slumped not from age, but from years of carrying pain no one could see. He stopped, just for a moment. And there it was, a flash, not from the lights, not from the street, but from within, a memory. He was 16 again, back in his old neighborhood, back in that cramped, rotting schoolyard where kids like him weren't expected to dream. He remembered the look on their faces when he tried to speak up, the laughter, the fists, the cold floor of the boys' bathroom where he'd been dragged and left bleeding simply because he'd scored higher than them on a math test. "You think you're better than us, huh?" one had yelled, spitting on his face. That day, something broke inside Samuel. Not his spirit, not yet, but his voice. He stopped raising his hand in class, stopped answering back, stopped looking people in the eye. And now, decades later, he felt that same silence gripping him again. It wasn't just Cole, Brandon, and Zach. It was every face that ever looked at him and saw less than human, every door that closed before he could knock, every opportunity taken away because of where he came from, the way he looked, the way he spoke. But that night, something shifted. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an old photo, creased and faded. It showed him in a martial arts uniform, standing proudly next to a younger man, his younger brother. He hadn't worn that uniform in over 20 years, hadn't stepped into a dojo since the accident. But the strength, the discipline, the clarity he once had, it was still there, buried, forgotten, until now. It happened on a Thursday. Rain was falling in heavy sheets, pounding the city like a warning drum. The lobby was quiet, except for the low hum of the security monitors and the steady drip of water from umbrellas as residents rushed through. Samuel stood at his post, silent as always, wiping the marble floors clean from muddy footprints. His back ached, but he didn't complain. That's when they came in. Cole, Brandon, and Zach, soaked from the rain, irritated and louder than usual. They were drunk. Not the cheerful kind of drunk, no, the dangerous kind, the kind that turns arrogance into cruelty. "Hey, old man," Brandon shouted, kicking the wet floor. "You missed a spot." Samuel didn't respond. He kept mopping. Zach snatched the mop from his hands and tossed it across the lobby. "Oops," he said, laughing. "Clumsy me." Still, Samuel didn't flinch. He just walked quietly to retrieve it. That's when Cole stepped in front of him. "Why don't you ever say anything, huh?" He poked Samuel's chest. "You deaf or just stupid?" Samuel looked up slowly, his eyes meeting Cole's for the first time. There was something in them. Not fear, not anger. Calm, cold, calculated. It made Cole falter for a split second. Then Zach pulled out his phone. "Let's go live. Let's show everyone our favorite little janitor trick." He started recording as Cole shoved Samuel harder this time, making him stumble back. That was the breaking point. Not because of the push, not because of the camera, but because Samuel saw himself reflected in that moment, not as a victim, but as a man whose silence had been mistaken for weakness far too long. He didn't speak. Instead, he moved. One swift motion. He stepped forward, twisted Cole's wrist, and in a flash, the phone hit the floor. Zach lunged, but Samuel sidestepped with fluid precision, causing him to crash into a chair. Brandon stood frozen. "What the hell?" Samuel picked up the mop, calmly, then looked at them, his voice deep and steady for the first time. "You boys think you're strong because you've never been broken, but strength doesn't come from power. It comes from surviving what you couldn't." Silence. Real silence. Not the kind that crushes, but the kind that demands respect. And just like that, the game changed. The building was buzzing. The video, yes, the one Zach dropped, had been accidentally uploaded before he could delete it. And within hours, it spread. Not just in their private group chats, but across platforms. People were stunned. Did you see what that janitor did? Who is he? Where did he learn to move like that? The next night, Samuel returned to work like nothing happened. Same uniform, same quiet nod. But everything had changed. Even the doorman from the morning shift looked at him differently, with respect, with curiosity, but no one knew. Not yet. Until one night, an older tenant, Mr. Rodriguez, a retired military vet, approached him quietly. "You moved like someone trained," he said. "Special forces?" Samuel gave a faint smile. Not quite. Rodriguez didn't press, but his eyes said it all. He knew there was more, and there was. Years ago, Samuel had been a rising star in the world of competitive martial arts. He'd trained under Grandmaster Takeda, one of the few to combine traditional Okinawan karate with modern street defense. By age 22, Samuel had 3 regional championships under his belt. By 25, he was on the national team. But then came the accident. A car crash. Not his fault, but it left his younger brother, Miguel, paralyzed from the waist down. Samuel quit everything, sold his gear, left the circuit, took up jobs to support Miguel's therapy, never stepped into a dojo again. "I didn't lose the skill," Samuel once told himself. "I just buried it." But that night in the lobby, that moment, it dug itself out. Not for revenge, not to show off, but because silence had gone on long enough. And now, people were starting to remember. An old video resurfaced online. Samuel, young and fierce, breaking 6 bricks in one strike. Comments exploded. "That's him! He was a legend! What happened to him?" For the first time in years, the world was no longer laughing at Samuel. It was listening. The mood in the building shifted. People who once ignored Samuel now greeted him with a mix of awe and discomfort. Some tenants apologized awkwardly. Others avoided eye contact altogether. But the 3 who mattered most, Cole, Brandon, and Zach, had vanished for a few days. Then, one night, they returned. Their swagger, gone. Their laughter, muted. But their pride, still intact, barely. Cole approached the front desk with a forced grin. "Look, man, about that night." He didn't finish the sentence. Couldn't. Brendan stood behind him, arms crossed, clearly not thrilled to be there. Zach just stared at the floor. Samuel looked up from his clipboard, eyes calm. "You came to say something?" he asked. Cole fumbled. Yeah, we were out of line, that's all." Samuel nodded. "You were." Silence. Awkward. Heavy. Then he added, "You have 2 choices. Keep pretending you're better than people, or actually become better." The words hit harder than any punch. They left without another word. But something unexpected happened after that. Other residents started coming to Samuel, not with fear, but with curiosity. They asked about his past, about martial arts, about how he stayed so calm. He started teaching a few self-defense moves to the overnight security team. Then a tenant asked if he'd train her teenage daughter who'd been getting bullied at school. Before long, the small mailroom turned into an after-hours dojo. Nothing official, just mats, discipline, and a man who had once lost everything now finding his purpose again. But the real surprise? Cole showed up. Alone, no bravado, no smirk. "I want to learn," he said simply. "I need to." Samuel studied him for a long moment, then gestured toward the mat. "Take off your shoes." From mockery to mentorship, the roles had reversed. Not because Samuel sought revenge, but because strength, real strength, isn't about breaking others, it's about rising and lifting others as you do. Months passed. What started as a night shift janitor job had become something far greater. Samuel didn't just clean floors anymore, he cleaned wounds. Not physical ones, but the kind people hide deep inside. The makeshift dojo grew. People of all ages showed up after hours. Tenants, security guards, even a local delivery guy who'd once been mugged and was too afraid to walk home alone. Samuel taught them not just how to defend themselves, but how to stand tall, how to be present, how to breathe through fear instead of letting it control them. And Cole? He kept showing up. He trained hard, took every hit with humility. He didn't complain when Samuel made him clean the mats after every session. One night, after class, Cole stayed behind. "My dad used to call me weak," he admitted. "Said I'd never be a real man. That's probably why I—" He stopped, choking on the words. Samuel didn't say anything, just placed a hand on his shoulder. "You don't need to explain," he said. "Just don't repeat it. That's how you break the chain." From tormentor to student, from victim to leader, the cycle was ending. One evening, the building's management held a tenant appreciation event. Samuel wasn't planning to go, but they insisted. To his surprise, when he arrived, everyone stood and applauded, not out of pity, out of respect. Mr. Rodriguez took the mic and shared Samuel's story. Not the whole thing, but just enough. Enough to let everyone know that a man they once overlooked had become the quiet force holding the community together. Samuel stepped forward, awkwardly at first. "I didn't come here looking for recognition," he said. "I just wanted peace. But life doesn't always give you peace. Sometimes it gives you a chance to be peace." The room went silent. Then someone from the back called out, "You're more than that, Samuel. You're our sensei." He smiled, genuinely, for the first time in a long time. Because this wasn't about revenge. It was about restoration, about turning pain into power. And in that moment he realized he was never just another victim. He was always more. He just needed the world to see it. Now they did. What would you do if the world saw you as less than you are? Would you fight, hide, or wait for the right moment to reveal who you truly are? Samuel waited, and when the moment came, he didn't scream, he didn't attack. He simply stood up and let his truth speak louder than any insult. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been underestimated? Have you ever surprised someone who thought they had you all figured out? Drop your story in the comments. And if this story touched your heart, like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs a reminder. You are not what they say you are. You are what you choose to become.